We'll come inside, and here's our little shed, and that has our generator, our tools. We got little wood for inside. My brother made this. You know, it's not the most amazing piece of furniture in the world, but my God, we're not gonna throw it away. Normally we take off our shoes when we enter, but we're gonna make an exception this time. So now we are in the immaculate kitchen of our cabin here. Nothing spectacular, but you know, we got what we need and some. The oven wasn't here when we bought it. We brought the oven in, got some basic shelving, you know what I mean? Nothing spectacular. Don't mind the diet and the Whoppers. This was here, you know, the guy made this countertop. It's beautiful, you know what I mean? But this happened this year. It's not the most pressure in the world, but hey, it works. And then we can filter it, you know? We got a filter that hooks up to the well, goes through the filter, goes into the tank upstairs, which you'll see, and then we filter it through here. So we do filter it twice before we drink it. Haven't had it tested yet, but it passes the taste test with flying colors. The guy who built this house, his name is Wayne Sapp. He was from Iowa. Him and his wife bought this land and built the house. They were going to use it as a summer retreat, but then they had, before he finished the house, they had a big tornado storm that blew down their biggest barn in Iowa, and they needed money. So they ended up turning around and selling the place, and that's why we got it for such a good deal. But now I'm really glad. At first I saw it as like kind of a, gosh, I got this house, I don't know what to do, my Lord. But now I'm thankful because we've been able to do a lot more work outside, and I couldn't build something like this. You know, I just couldn't, not yet in my life, you know. Like I stated before, there are unfinished projects. You'll see, we put the wood stove in. It works amazing. It's an earth stove. It's not cast iron, it's steel. And yeah, that's our money maker right there. It really heats up. We heat up our water on it. A lot of times we got cast iron skillets we put on there, so we'll heat water and cook. Got this sweet little fan that spins as it heats, and that spins or pushes some air around. Got my unfinished mosaic, which is just gorgeous, I know. My God, everybody wants to buy one of these. Got a nice little hide-a-bed here, little corner area where we hang out. When it's clear, like right now you can see a little bit, but looking to the west, there's Mount Redoubt, which is a volcano. And yeah, our northern view of Storiski Valley. You'll see a lot of moose down there, hear wolves, coyotes at night. Doesn't take too much to heat, pretty small. All right, so our bathroom here, like I said, is unfinished because I'm not really that great of a carpenter. Now we have a toilet that runs, which I don't care about, but my girlfriend cares about, and I can understand why. It's nice when people come over to be able to send them to the toilet instead of the outhouse. Not to get private, but I pee all around the outside of our land. You know, not the 20 acres, but where we have the orchard, and that acts, I think, as like a border for the animals to stay away. We mark our territory, and I talk to my dogs like they're little humans, and I'm like, go pee on the borders, and I swear they do, man. So yeah, now we got a toilet, which is nice, but we would like to put a bath. Not sure if dimensions match up. We do have it plumbed for water, both hot water on demand system, as well as the cold water. So once I figure out a design that I want in here, which I'm having trouble with, we'll get it done, you know? But in the meantime, we go to Anchor Point. It's 8 miles away, and you know, going to town to check the mail or whatever, and there's a nice laundromat, shower place, pay $5, 11 minutes of hot shower. I mean, you know, I'm a infantryman myself, so I take like a 2-minute shower. A lot of times I don't take the whole shower. I'm like, all right, you know. So sometimes same thing as with the generator, like, do I need to do it? Do I need to make a shower in here, you know? But I know it would be nice at some point, especially if we want to rent it or just to have it finished. But so this is the bathroom. It's pretty basic right now. And then we have a back room back here that we just put some flooring down for, and that's generally used for, like, right now our worker, he stays in that back room, and we've had people visit, they stay in the back room. But yeah, that's just kind of storage right now. So walking up the stairs to my loft, which is actually a sauna when we have it heated up in here. It's a beautiful thing and a bad thing, you know, having a loft like this. We don't have an overhead fan, which we would really like to get, or some other fan up here. But when it's cold outside and you have the heat blazing up here, I mean, you're sleeping desnudo, which is Spanish for without clothes. Like, you can't be in clothes. It's so hot, man. We did have a house sitter stay here at one point, and she was really into what's that, hot yoga, Bikram? Yeah. And she was like, this is the best yoga studio ever, you know, and she loved it. But same type of thing, floor's unfinished, you know, we got some carpet tiles, thinking about laying down, but then I'm like, oh, why should I got other things I want to do. But pretty simple, you know, got our bed, our little table area, a rocking chair, you know, a friend gave us, our little hot water heater. Earlier, I made a mistake because usually I have Levi, who's the plumber, fill up the water tank. You know, we run the well, fill up the water. Well, I was the one in charge, and of course, I'm Mr. Multitask, so I was building a fire at the same time, and it overflowed, you know? So we ended up having a little bit of water that went on the ground here underneath it, and I'm cleaning it up, so sorry for the mess. But it's our little closet space, you know, it ain't nothing spectacular, man, but it's easy, it's simple, you know? I don't spend a lot of time looking at what I'm gonna wear in the morning. I generally just put it on and go forth with my day. So yeah, I mean, it's nice up here, man. You know, you can sit in the rocking chair and look out to the north, and if it's winter, I mean, literally you can lay in bed and you can see the northern lights. I mean, my girlfriend's first winter was here in Alaska, her first winter. And on her birthday, October 1st of that year, I remember I woke, for some reason I had to wake up and go to the restroom, and I went outside on the deck and I looked up and they were just all over the sky. I was like, oh my God. I came upstairs like, Sunrisa, you gotta go, check it out. She's like, what? And she gets out there and literally just cries. She's just crying. Oh my God. Yeah, she was up for like 45 minutes, you know, like you can walk probably longer. Me, I've seen it so much, you know, I grew up in Nome, but seen it so much, it's like, oh yeah, the Northern Lights, it's great, you know, but it is really nice to be able to be in your own home, look out the windows, go on your deck. There's no light pollution, which is another huge quality in off-the-grid living. No light pollution. I see the stars. I see, you know, I wouldn't say Uranus, but I see some things out there, you know. And yeah, man, so it's nice. Yeah, this is the spot.
My name is Jane, and I'm living in this tree house this summer.
I'm Trevor. We originally wanted to build a tiny house. Turns out having tiny house is pretty expensive, and to build a tiny house, we'd have to buy a truck that could tow it from the East Coast up to here, and then we'd want it to be mobile, so then tow it back down. So the cost of having a trailer, a house, and a truck that could pull it ended up being a little too much, but we still wanted to have a little something up here where we had our own place to live.
2 months from clearing to starting to build.
The first wall got put up September 22nd maybe. We were at the point of the platform was done and we were ready to put up walls. Got the roof on and finished on October 16th at about 9 p.m. and it started to snow that day at about 7 p.m. and I'm up in the roof, and since it's a tree house, it's already like we're 20 feet off the ground, and then I'm on the roof, so I had this rope system set up, so I was hanging from a rope, finishing up the roof at night with the light up there as it was starting to snow. It's been great. It's been pretty warm, stayed dry. It's been pretty rainy this last week.
Very cozy.
Breakfast in the morning, and when it hasn't been raining, and sitting and looking at Rez Peak and the view of the mountains. It's not a bad life. So to start off with, we have a nice covered porch because we were talking earlier about the design process and how kind of I worked through it as I went, and I was trying to figure out how to get the snow not accumulating in the winter on the deck. And one of the guys was like, just build a roof over it. So now we have a little covered section, which right now is housing the stuff that has to go in, like our windows and our stove. Then for our deck, we have a nice little space for enough for a couple people. The big part of it is it's a tree house, so it can only handle so much weight. So it's nice. It's the perfect size deck, I think. We can't fit too many people, so we can't collapse it.
And hopefully pretty soon we'll put some railings up for safety.
Yeah, I think railings might be windows, electricity. There's some things, but we're gonna have some railings because it is about 22 feet down. So we want to get to the point where we're going to stay dry and we could be kind of warm. So literally the first thing that we did this summer in Seward, or in Alaska, is we bought a wood stove on the drive down from Anchorage. I drove up from New York, picked her up in Anchorage, then we drove back up to Palmer, picked up a wood stove from Craigslist, drove down and put it in that next morning. So we only had one night without heat. And we're dry and warm. We don't have running water or electricity. We have heat at least, but the roughing it, the kind of glorified camping, which is living in the treehouse right now as it's under construction, it's not bad for us. We're kind of used to it.
Yeah, not too bad. And we're only 3 miles from town and spend most of our day at the office and in town. So our offices have showers in them, so that's pretty good.
Showers and kitchens.
You also were, in a way, designing as you were building, don't you think?
I was definitely designing as I was building. Like, the platform was done without knowing what the actual structure was going to look like. I didn't know how tall the ceilings were going to be. I knew the footprint of it, but I didn't know how high it was going to be, what the roof design was going to be. I'd literally just, after getting done working on the platform, I'd come home and I'd make little sketches and be like, oh, this looks good. I like this a little better, and get input from some of my friends. Show the drawings to Jane. And so I literally was at home making 3D cardboard models and be like, Jane, what do you think of this? And then she goes, well, I don't know about that. And I'd redesign it, and then this is all while I was building. The second thing that we put in when we got here after the wood stove was a door. Over winter it was just 4x8 sheet of plywood nailed to the wall. So we actually have a door now. Now we're working on our window as well. So we haven't actually put a window in yet, but we've cut the holes in all the spots where the windows are going to be have been framed out already. We just have to cut them out and put them in.
How many windows are you going to put in?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Twice as many as originally anticipated.
Yeah. I really wanted a lot of light because I like really bright places, so I pushed for more windows and got Trevor to double the number of windows he originally planned for.
And my thought was, we're only here in the summer, there's tons of light. We only need 3 windows. But we went to Lowe's and they had a whole bunch of windows that were returns. So we got 3 windows for $45 each or something.
Yeah, and Trevor ended up sort of designing and framing the house around the windows that we bought on sale, including this cool octagon-shaped window that we have up top here.
So the first thing, this isn't part of it yet, but there was an old hemlock. We actually counted the rings and it's about 120 years old, but it died for a good cause. It helps support the center of the structure, so it is a 24-foot span between this main tree and the 2 trees on that side of the treehouse, and this guy underneath is supporting the middle. So it's actually a super helpful tree, and it is going to turn into, we're going to cut it off and make it flat, and then it's going to turn into a table, our evening table, and we'll be able to sit here looking at one another and have dinner. Eventually this will become a problem, but that's very far down the line, so I'm not worrying about it yet. It is a hemlock, and they last a really long time. They're a pretty rot-resistant tree. So if it was a Sitka spruce, I would have just cut it all the way off. But since it's a hemlock, we're going to keep it. And actually, this was probably the most unexpected thing when we were building the treehouse. So I climbed this by hand with a bow saw and went up and limbed this tree to about 40-45 feet up, with leaving the lowest level of branches, so in case I fell, there'd be at least a little bit something to stop my fall. So I went up and limbed it till it was about this big in diameter, until I didn't feel comfortable with it supporting me anymore. And one of the owners of our companies had told me before that, like, oh, why don't you keep that tree? If you go up and limb it, and then I'll cut it down for you. And he wasn't being serious, but I went up and limbed it, and so then he didn't have a choice because he is a man of his word. So right here, this level is about 18 feet off the ground. So he was up on a ladder with a chainsaw, cutting down this tree. Overall was about 65 feet high, and cutting it 18 feet off the ground. So that was pretty exciting to watch, and I'm glad I wasn't the one up on the ladder with the chainsaw cutting this big tree off.
This is where we have our kitchen set up for now. I don't really know why we chose this side, because I think ultimately we're going to have the kitchen and the stove over here. So we do actually have sort of a makeshift temporary sink right here, but we were thinking kitchen on this side, maybe a little living area with a chair right here, and like Trevor was saying, have a dining room table-esque thing right here in front of the window.
Pretty much everything down here, except for the wood stove, is just a temporary something, because we do have to insulate the walls and put on our inner walls.
The other temporary thing we have is a makeshift ladder right here, which is how we get to the loft right now, which is just some piece of scrap wood, even a branch up there for a limb. But I think ultimately we might put the ladder and to get up to the loft in this corner and cut out a little hole right here, which is the floor of the loft. So that'll be pretty cool if we end up doing that.
So we're going to use foam, 2-inch foam insulation for between the roof joists, just so we don't have to deal with the messiness that is fiberglass insulation. Also, it's a pretty small cabin, so it's 16 by 12, so it's not a lot of volume to heat up for wood. So we're going for fairly light insulation. There will be fiberglass in the walls, but the foam is for the ceiling.
What are you going to do for water?
It's a great question.
Really good question. Right now we just have these blue tanks right here. We might end up using that for quite a while. Just have a tank of water and use that for washing dishes.
The owner of our business, who lives in a cabin the same size, has been using those same blue containers for
About 8 years, I think. Yeah.
with the 5-gallon bucket under his sink that he has to go outside and empty.
One of the things that we've talked about for a while is having some sort of gravity-fed water system, and putting a really big water tank up top, because the driveway is so much higher than the house is right now, and somehow having some tubes coming down from that would be pretty awesome. And maybe an outdoor shower outside on the deck.
We're definitely having an outdoor shower off of the main support tree here. We were talking about Jared the other night, whose dad is working with this guy Jack. Jack is putting in a sand point, or just put in a sand point well, which is a shallow well that goes around 20 to 30 feet deep in areas with a high water table and sandy soil. And I think at the bottom of our hill here we could put in a sand point well and then have actual running water. We just have to go get it tested and then pumped up the hill.
Do you plan on doing an outhouse out here?
Yeah, plan on doing an outhouse hopefully in the next few days so we can get that in use.
I started digging the hole yesterday, and then I hit a rock which is way too large to move. So we have to rethink where it's going to be.
Pretty simple though, simple and small in structure.
One of Yen, the owner of the company, who has the same size cabin, he has a friend down in Wenatchee, Washington, who has a tree house that he built for his kids, and he's a commercial fisherman and likes building stuff. So he built a pretty big tree house for his kids, and he used these bolts. So Ryan told us about them, and what it is, it's a 1-inch thick by 7 inches deep into the tree, and then it has a 3-inch basically collar on it that is the main weight supporting area. So the tree house has 2 on this main tree and then 1 each on those trees. It's a floating system. So these 2 are fixed. So this tree is fixed and those 2 float. So as they grow, it's able to push outwards, and as the wind flexes the trees, they're actually on rollers over there, so the whole thing will move a little bit. To get it lined up for these slots, because there's the metal plate that goes inside, there was a lot of work with the Sawzall and then just filing the inside of it to get it perfect. And then to actually get the beams up was super challenging. So it's the main 3 beams that run lengthwise are 12 inch by 4 inch by 24 foot pressure treated beams. So we had Jane, myself, and 3 other guides carry them down the hill. They weigh about 330 pounds each, and then we actually had beam across where this tree is here that we cantilevered out onto that beam and then slid it the rest of the way. So that was the only time that we had that many people working on it. For raising the walls, we had 4 of us at one point. And this main cross beam we actually Jane and I did it all on our own with the help of my truck. So I had a rope tied to it and an anchor up in the tree, and Jane directed me as I drove that way, and it pulled the beam up. Because that beam weighs, it was like 270 pounds or something, and it's 15, 16 feet up there, so we used some mechanical help.
So this is our loft area. So basically our bedroom. So we got a bed just a few days ago, which was pretty sweet. And as you can see, a lot of other clothes and gear that is not yet organized. But we did get this nice cube organizer yesterday, which helps. But it's pretty spacious. We're thinking about rearranging the bed a little bit, maybe putting it over here. Trevor built in a dormer on the side, so we can stand up, or at least I can stand up all the way to the wall right here, and there'll be a window.
No, I could stand. I designed it specifically at the height so I could go right to the edge and stand up. Luckily, neither of us are really tall.
Yeah.
But it's designed around our heights.
Yeah.
Right in here, we currently don't have our gangplank, but we're going to have a little beam that goes across for Jane and I. And then since it's limited space, a little over 300 square feet, we have to put our clothes somewhere, so we're going to have our clotheslines over in here so we can hang up, you know, all our puffy coats and like the big bulky things and sleeping bags, and a lot of our camping gear will just be hanging in this open space here.
Does it get pretty toasty up here with the stove downstairs?
Yeah, you can feel the warm air coming right up behind the wall here, which is nice.
Yeah, without any insulation even, so once we get the insulation in, it should be pretty nice. Like when we go to sleep, it's really toasty, but then when we wake up, it's pretty cold. But that'll change in the next couple days, maybe.
We may put the bed right here and then have the ladder or the entrance to the loft in that corner, perhaps.
Yeah, we're definitely at the point where we're just gonna try to figure out how much room we have and how much stuff we have, and figuring out organizational techniques to get that all in. Luckily, Jane is super organized. Her nickname at the shop is actually the Meticulous Marmot. So while I might have been better at the big picture designing of things and the building of things, when it comes to the interior work and trying to make sure that we have an efficient flow of space and we're able to fit everything in, that's where you come in. I think a big motivation for me and for Jane was that we want to have a little space of our own, but in Seward, rent is super expensive. So for $1,200 a month, we could live in a space that's this big. Or for $35,000 altogether, we could have an acre of property, which is a decent investment here just because Seward's a kind of up and coming town, and have our own house that we call our own. We can design it however we want, we can make it all our own. So when it comes down to it economically, it's, I think, a really good decision. And if you can be your own landlord and design whatever you want instead of paying somebody else rent, it's a good investment, and you have control over where you live, and you make it whatever you want.
Hi, I'm Ben. We're here in Seward, Alaska, just outside of town, and this is my yurt and tree house and my greenhouse under construction. Started building it this summer with the idea that I was going to use it this summer. That didn't happen because I got pretty far behind and it was a bigger project than I thought. Next summer I'll be ready, hopefully. I mostly used recycled materials for the walls and then the Lexan for the sides I went and bought, but I used pallets for the floor and then some leftover beams from another project. When I first built the yurt, there was no driveway coming down this steep hill, but none of this, it was all trees, and I wanted something that I could have an easy foundation for. So I looked into building tree houses and made a purchase from Treehouse stuff for the Garnier limb, and it's a specific treehouse bolt, and you can actually see them right here. It's actually got a sliding bracket with a piece of UHMW, which actually makes it silent, so it doesn't creak and groan. Always been pretty silent. I picked the healthiest trees I could find, only time will tell. I feel like they definitely have an expiration date to them. The yurt, I think I did in, I want to say 2010. Everything else has just been kind of a super slow process. Don't have a lot of cash, so I do a lot of stuff by hand really slowly, and it takes a while. Everything's always under construction. This is my fancy staircase that I'll eventually change someday. I made this little extension because the deck was a little narrow. Decided to add, fire pit and some chairs, and got my little barbecue. I've had guests here before, and that's kind of the main spot to hang out, Inside the yurt isn't the greatest unless it's raining out. And back here is the outhouse. It's not very fancy. It's just a miniature composting toilet with sawdust. I've got a large composting bin that I'll have set up back over there. Normally I take it to my neighbor's composting bin. They don't use it for vegetables or anything. It's more for a lawn garden kind of like don't take it to the dump kind of thing. And I've got the hose running down through here. This is just PEX tubing. Gravity feeds from a 300-gallon tank that I have that I fill up with another pump. It runs down to here into a pressure pump into my sink inside the yurt. And there I have a little catchment bucket. I pump that from the creek up to there. Filter system isn't great right now, but hopefully in the future I'll use it a little more. Right now it's more for dishes, and I kind of bring my own drinking water. You can see that white hose right down there. That's what I would pump it from the creek from, with like a half-horse pump with the generator running, and it's pretty simple. And with 350 gallons or 300 gallons, it takes a while to drain just doing dishes. But eventually I like to have a cleaner tank and a better system for the tree house where it actually flows out into a gray water system. And this is inside. Pretty simple, just the bed for now and my wood stove table. Small kitchen area. This was just recycled drawers from my brother's remodel, and then icebox for my other brother's remodel. I have the gravity-fed sink with the pressure pump here that I can turn off and on, and then a small catchment bucket. And eventually I'll probably do an actual drain outside, but in the winter it kind of freezes up, so it's not really usable. Built the countertop and the frame and everything. I do cabinet work and interior stuff with my dad throughout the winter, so I've got a nice shop to work in. Dining, crafts, whatever. Pretty much the only place to sit or do anything in here. It's a small space. It's only a 16-foot yurt, so I try to spend time outside if I'm here. It's not the greatest place to hang out if you're gonna be indoors all the time. This is a Yodel wood stove, and they're actually really common. It actually came with the yurt. It's pretty small, but once it's hot, it keeps the yurt extremely hot to the point where you want to open the door, and then as soon as it goes out, it tends to cool off pretty quick in here, especially in the wintertime. I know the yurt makers try to say that they're 4 seasons, but it's only 4 seasons that the stove is running constantly. So always keep that in mind if you ever buy one. When I stayed out here in the winter a little bit, I would be pretty strict with the wood and just kind of make a fire when I was here, and then come back and heat it up, and then I'd leave and it'd be frozen when I got back. And then I do have a small battery bank, and I'll just charge that for small power use. Just 12 volt, outlets, and it used to hook up to a solar panel, but I couldn't. It doesn't seem to work when I hooked it up to the voltmeter. But yeah, having a battery display is nice, but it doesn't work that well all the time. I don't use it too often unless I'm car camping or not here with the generator. But then I do have one other LED here that comes off the ceiling off this 12-volt battery that also runs the pressure pump. And it's all really a temporary setup. I'd like to do it a lot better in the future. It's kind of what I had sitting around. Well, I bought the yurt on Craigslist for about half the price that they are new, and that was the biggest sell for getting the yurt. I don't think I would buy one brand new unless it was gonna be a rental and you knew it was gonna pay for itself, or you knew you were gonna be moving a lot, because they're really not that warm, and for 10 grand you can build a pretty nice stick-built structure of probably a bigger size. The insulation isn't great. It's a 4-season yurt, but I mean, when the stove's going, it's really hot, but it's also hard to control. You know, it's either way too hot or really cold. They are easy to set up and easy to take down. The hardest part, I would say, is putting up the platform and the foundation, you know, and if you have an elaborate foundation, then you tend to not want to take it down again. I do plan on taking that down and moving it somewhere else and building a stick-built structure there at some point, but that's what led me to the tree house, because I wanted something a little bigger and something that would retain heat better. And they're definitely not 4-season, you know, unless you like to suffer. Eventually I would like to make a sauna, hot tub area, bathhouse, whatever, kind of in between the two structures that could be shared, but that's a long ways down the road. So yeah, now we can go check out the tree house. It had nice trees. It's on higher ground. The trees were pretty healthy, and it was the best chance of a view. I built this double knee brace bracket a couple of years ago when I was building the deck. I wanted a bigger deck, and had to add a few more trees, and then I had another friend weld me this giant bracket as well, and then I've also had other friends weld different treehouse brackets throughout the construction instead of paying for the expensive ones online. But they are the official treehouse bolts, but they're definitely worth buying. They're really, really stable, really strong if you put them in right, but it's like the most important part of your treehouse. I don't want to give you instructions because it's kind of dangerous, but there's plenty of literature on the web to show you how to do it. But if they're installed right, they hold a lot of weight. This is the start of the staircase. Right now, it's just a ladder. I'll have a gravel pad right here. With the trees here, I didn't want to dig into the ground and make a deep scar next to the roots and everything, so I'm going to do a gravel pad here, and hopefully that'll save the tree roots a little bit. And then from there I'll have a stair landing up to this chopped off tree here, to another stair landing, and then step right onto the deck. And by then hopefully I'll have handrails. Building it has taken a while. I'm a slow builder. It's been to my benefit though, because I've used a lot of salvage materials, so the longer I wait, it seems the more material I end up collecting. The siding, for example, up top, all the horizontal siding was salvaged from a home remodel in town, and it's just old cedar lap siding that never seems to go bad. And then all the vertical board and batten and window trim was all stuff that I milled here off trees from the property. And then also the studs on the interior, or almost all the studs on the interior, were from another home remodel. And I only used 2x4 studs to keep it light, and it's a small structure, so I don't feel the need for true 2x6 walls. Since it goes around the trees, it's kind of hard to gauge. It's kind of a weird shape. Never actually measured it. I mean, each wall is a different length, but I did make tall walls, 10-foot walls, so that I can have a taller loft, and I think that's important. I mean, I don't want a loft where I'm crawling around in or anything. I definitely consider that if you're building a small home. But this tree in particular, it kind of leans a lot, and I didn't actually want it part of the structure because of the leaning part. So when I did build this through the deck, I built it in the idea that it can break away from the rest of the structure instead of totaling the treehouse. But that's, worst case scenario. And the inside is pretty messy. It's basically a tool shed at the moment. This is my generator that runs pretty much everything as far as tools and sometimes power for my batteries at the yurt if I'm staying up here or somebody else. Right now I've been kind of just collecting a lot of materials in here. I've got a lot of insulation that I bought off the internet or off Craigslist, I think, and then some traded insulation, and then leftover siding. Pretty much just gathering materials. In the wintertime, when it gets colder and miserable outside, I'll come in here and start doing interior work instead of wasting my time in the summer. Like I said, I'll have a loft in here. It'll either, I still haven't decided if it'll go all the way across or just to right about here and then have a little open area up top. I kind of like the headspace. From this wall here over to the other wall, I will install a wall with a sliding door, and that'll have a small bathroom with just a composting toilet and then a shower on one end, and hopefully enough room for a small sink in the middle. And that will take away quite a bit of the space in here, but I think it'll be worth it not having to go, you know, down out of the treehouse to use the bathroom. And then on the opposite side of the wall that'll be here, that'll be my kitchen area. The imaginary loft will be the sleeping area, and then mostly storage too as well. But I do plan on renting it for a while before I live here, I guess. So I do feel like tree houses have an expiration date. So you know, no matter how well you build them, you know, shit happens. For myself, I might do a wood burning stove, but as far as renting it, I'll have a vented propane heater. But it has to be vented, or else it's just the heat is too wet and it's not very good for the building or for yourself for that matter. So yeah, vented propane for a while, and then maybe I might have a wood stove as well. But wood stoves are a lot of work, and that's a big staircase to haul wood up. So I'll have that tank that I have below the treehouse hooked up to another pressure pump. Hopefully that should be enough to get pressure up here. And I've also thought about doing rainwater. But being underneath the trees with all the pine needles, it's kind of more hassle than it actually is worth. And then I do have a lot of birds around here. My neighbor tends to feed the ravens, so I have bird shit everywhere. So I don't know how great the water catchment is up here.
If you had to guess, since you're doing a lot of reclaimed material, how much do you think you have into this place?
I don't want to know. I don't know. My goal is to get 10 grand from it from renting, and then I feel like I can be satisfied. I know I have somewhere around 10 grand altogether, and that's more for expensive stuff and paying friends to help me occasionally. I don't even know if I have 10 grand into it, and it's been over such a long period. I really should have paid attention while I was building it, to be honest. Now I kind of forget what's recycled and salvaged and what isn't. The main expense is plywood, it seemed like, plywood and roofing. You can use small pieces, but then you're just scabbing it together and it's not as strong, you have more leaks, I don't know.
Somebody thinking about doing this, do you have any advice for somebody thinking about doing a tree house or a small structure like this?
Yeah, build it on the ground. It's a lot of work. Yeah, they look cool in the end, but it's a lot of work. Just putting up siding alone, like I built scaffolding around the entire treehouse, which I didn't think I was going to have to do, but in the end I had to do it, and I'll eventually have to take it down, and it's not easy putting up siding at, 12, 14 feet off the ground.
Do you wish you would have built this on the ground rather than a tree house?
Kinda, just because I think it probably would have been done by now if it wasn't in the treehouse, but I did want to have a treehouse, and I wanted to build something unique, and after I finish this, I plan on building other unique structures. I don't know. I think it's boring to build a normal house.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.